When an elderly woman walked into a bustling cafe, no one suspected her quiet presence would expose a shocking truth and bring the entire room to a standstill. The late afternoon sun streamed through the wide glass windows of the Daily Grind, a popular coffee shop in the heart of the city. The air inside was filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, the cheerful clatter of mugs, and a soft hum of conversations. It was the kind of place where students studied, friends caught up, and remote workers tapped away on their laptops. Amid the industrial chic decor and trendy patrons, the entrance door opened to reveal an elderly woman. Before we continue, tell us where in the world you're watching from. Drop it in the comments below. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more powerful content like this. Her steps were slow but deliberate, her back straight, despite the years etched into her frame. She was dressed in a simple dark blue cardigan with a delicate brooch pinned to it, her small woven handbag tucked securely under her arm. Her expression was calm, yet there was a quiet dignity about her that turned a few heads. The barista, a young man named Alex with tattoos on his arms and a practiced, easy smile, greeted her with a nod that felt a touch automatic, almost imperceptible, but present nonetheless. "What can I get for you, ma'am?" he asked, glancing briefly over his shoulder, as if to ensure he wasn't holding up the line. "Just a cup of plain black coffee, please," the woman replied, her voice steady and polite. Alex scanned the menu, then raised an eyebrow. "We have a wide range of specialty coffees, ma'am. Lattes, cappuccinos, pour-overs." He trailed off, his tone hinting at a subtle impatience. "Just black coffee will be fine, thank you," she reiterated, her smile unwavering. Alex nodded curtly and began preparing her order. She paid him, then moved to the side, waiting patiently. A few moments passed, then several more. Alex busied himself with other customers, taking their elaborate orders and engaging in friendly banter. He walked past her multiple times, barely sparing her a glance. The nearby tables, filled with younger, more casually dressed diners, seemed to be receiving immediate and attentive service. She noticed the side glances. A young woman 2 tables over whispered something to her friend, both of them sneaking looks in her direction. Another patron furrowed their brow as if trying to piece together why she seemed so out of place. Minutes turned into what felt like an eternity. Alex returned to the counter, but his demeanor was no warmer. He placed a cup of coffee down, not making eye contact. "Here's your coffee, ma'am," he said briskly, already turning to the next customer. The woman nodded gracefully and thanked him, though the coffee was lukewarm. She wasn't about to make a scene, but the discomfort in the air was palpable. As she settled back into her chair, seemingly unbothered, someone from across the room noticed everything, and their expression darkened. From a corner seat, she observed the room with quiet composure. It wasn't her first encounter with this kind of subtle treatment, the kind that wasn't loud or overt, but had a way of making itself known in every delayed service and dismissive glance. Still, she remained poised, her hands resting gently on the table as if she were merely passing time. Meanwhile, Alex busied himself with nearby customers, his tone cheerful and his smile effortless as he took orders and cracked jokes. When he walked past her table again without even acknowledging her, the unease among the other diners began to grow. A young couple near the center of the room exchanged nervous glances. "Why hasn't that woman been served properly?" the woman whispered, her voice barely audible over the ambient music. Her partner shrugged, casting a quick glance toward Alex, who seemed completely indifferent. The seconds stretched into minutes, and though the woman kept her calm exterior, a small part of her wondered how far this would go. She reached for her coffee cup, but even that had been left half empty. A few tables away, Alex delivered a fresh, steaming latte to a customer who had arrived long after she did. He finally returned to wipe down the counter, pausing briefly as he passed her. "Need anything else, ma'am?" he asked, his tone bordering on dismissive, as though the delay were her fault. She looked up at him, her eyes steady and kind, but with a quiet intensity that made him falter. "No, thank you," she said, her voice measured and polite. Alex nodded, muttering something under his breath as he walked away. But a few tables away, someone else had been watching closely. At a table near the back, a man in his late 30s sat with a half-empty glass of iced tea. Dressed in a crisp, dark sweater, his demeanor was calm but sharp, his eyes narrowing as he observed Alex's behavior. He had been quietly taking note of every interaction, every slight, and every dismissive glance. His fingers tapped lightly on the table as his expression grew colder with each passing minute. For now, he stayed silent, his gaze darting between the elderly woman and the staff. He wasn't just any patron. He was the cafe's owner. And the elderly woman wasn't just any patron. She was his mother. But he wasn't ready to step in just yet. He wanted to see how far this would go, how Alex would treat someone he assumed was powerless. His jaw tightened as Alex laughed with another table, oblivious to the storm brewing on the other side of the room. The tension was building, and though the elderly woman remained calm, the air in the cafe grew heavier with every passing second. Something had to give, and it was only a matter of time. Across the room, David leaned back in his chair, his fingers still rhythmically tapping the edge of the table. He wasn't the type to lose his temper easily. Years in the service industry had taught him that patience was often the most powerful tool in his arsenal. But this was different. Watching his mother endure the subtle but deliberate mistreatment filled him with a slow, burning anger. David had poured his heart into building the daily grind. It was more than just a business. It was a testament to the values his mother had instilled in him: respect, integrity, and fairness. She had been his anchor through years of struggle, the voice in his ear reminding him to keep pushing forward when the odds were stacked against him. Now, seeing her treated as though she didn't belong in a space he had created, it felt personal. He noticed the way Alex avoided her table, the way he smiled effortlessly at other guests, while his expression hardened whenever he glanced her way. David caught the faint smirk Alex gave another server, as if sharing an unspoken joke. His grip tightened around his glass. The cafe was his domain, his pride. Every detail, from the menu to the decor, bore his mark. Yet at this moment, he felt powerless. His mother was the one person in the world he would never allow to be disrespected, and here she was enduring it with a grace he wasn't sure he could master himself. David's thoughts raced. Should he confront Alex now and make an example of him in front of the entire cafe? Or should he wait and let the moment unfold, ensuring there was no room for excuses later? He chose the latter. He signaled to the manager, a middle-aged woman named Sarah, who approached his table cautiously. "Keep an eye on the woman in the blue cardigan," he said under his breath, nodding toward his mother. "I want to see how Alex handles this. Don't intervene yet." Sarah hesitated but nodded. She knew better than to question David when his tone was that firm. David's focus returned to his mother. She was now looking at her watch, her movements deliberate and calm. She wasn't going to complain. He knew that much. Complaints had never been her way. She believed in letting actions speak louder than words. But David also believed in actions, and soon Alex would see the consequences of his. The tension in the cafe had become impossible to ignore. Conversations had quieted, and more patrons were stealing glances at the elderly woman. Alex, however, seemed oblivious or perhaps emboldened as he passed by her table again. She politely raised her hand. "Excuse me," she said softly, a voice cutting through the murmurs around her. Alex paused, his expression tightening with impatience. "Yes?" he replied curtly, barely masking his irritation. "Could I please get a refill on my coffee?" she said, maintaining her grace. Alex sighed audibly, glancing around as if to find an escape. "I'll be back in a minute," he muttered, turning away before she could respond. At that moment, David rose from his seat, his movements deliberate and unhurried. The room seemed to shift as he crossed it, his presence commanding. Without a word, he reached Alex, just as the barista was joking with another customer. The casual arrogance on his face quickly melted into confusion when he noticed David standing beside him. "David, hey," Alex stammered, attempting a smile. "I didn't know you were here." "I've been here," David said calmly, his voice carrying an unmistakable authority. "And I've been watching." Alex's smile faltered. "Watching what?" David's eyes flicked toward his mother's table, then back to Alex. "Watching you ignore my mother, who's been sitting there for almost 30 minutes without so much as a proper cup of coffee." The color drained from Alex's face. He glanced toward the elderly woman who was now sitting upright, her calm gaze locked on the interaction. Your mother?" Alex stammered, his voice cracking. "Yes, my mother," David said, his tone sharpening. "The woman you've treated like an inconvenience. The woman you thought didn't deserve the same respect you've been showering on every other customer in this room." The cafe fell silent. All eyes were now on them. Even the low music had faded slightly. Alex opened his mouth to speak, but David cut him off. "Save it," he said, his voice cold. "There's no excuse for what you've done, and everyone here has seen it." David turned to the manager, who had been hovering near the back, unsure whether to intervene. "Sarah," he said, his voice steady, "take over and make sure my mother has everything she needs immediately." Sarah nodded quickly and rushed toward the elderly woman's table, offering her a flurry of apologies as she refilled her coffee cup and brought her a fresh pastry. David turned back to Alex, his expression unreadable. "We'll discuss your future here later. For now, you're done for the day. Go home." Alex stood frozen for a moment, his face a mix of humiliation and regret. Then, without a word, he untied his apron and walked out of the cafe, the heavy door swinging shut behind him. The silence lingered for a beat longer before David approached his mother's table. He crouched slightly to meet her gaze, his stern demeanor softening into something warmer. "You okay, Mom?" he asked quietly. The elderly woman smiled, reaching out to pat his hand. I'm fine, son. You handled that well. David exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing. I should have stepped in sooner. No, she replied gently. You let him reveal his character. Sometimes that's more powerful than confronting someone right away. But as the cafe returned to its usual hum of activity, it was clear that no one would forget what had just happened, or the lesson it carried. The atmosphere in the daily grind had shifted. Conversations picked up again, but the air was heavier, more thoughtful. Patrons who had witnessed the scene now looked at the elderly woman with a mixture of respect and quiet admiration. David returned to his table, his face still composed, though the lingering anger in his eyes hadn't entirely faded. Meanwhile, Sarah, the manager, made sure the elderly woman had everything she desired. She personally presented a fresh, hot cup of coffee with an apology so heartfelt it felt as though she were trying to undo the actions of the entire evening. The elderly woman accepted the apology with her usual grace, offering a small nod before turning her attention to her beverage. She didn't need grand gestures or speeches. Her quiet dignity had spoken volumes already. At another table, the young couple who had been observing the entire situation leaned toward each other. I can't believe he treated her like that, the woman whispered, shaking her head. It makes you think about how often this happens and no one says anything. Her partner nodded thoughtfully. It's not just about what you see. It's about what you're willing to stand up against when it happens. David overheard their exchange as he passed their table on his way back to his mother. Their words stayed with him. He thought about the countless times people like Alex had gotten away with mistreatment simply because no one had been watching or cared enough to intervene. When David sat down beside his mother, she reached across the table and took his hand. You've built something beautiful here, David, she said softly. But remember, a place like this isn't just about coffee or ambience. It's about how people feel when they walk through those doors. I know, Mom, David replied, his voice tinged with regret. I let you down tonight. She shook her head. No, you didn't. You gave everyone here a chance to see the truth, and you handled it with integrity. That's what matters. Around them, the staff seemed more attentive, the service more thoughtful. It wasn't just about avoiding another incident. It was about the unspoken lesson David's actions had taught them all. Respect and kindness weren't optional. They were the foundation of everything. As the elderly woman finished her coffee, she glanced around the room, her gaze settling briefly on Sarah, who gave her a small, apologetic smile. There was no bitterness in her expression, only a quiet satisfaction that the moment had left an impression. But for David, the lesson wasn't just for Alex or the staff. It was a reminder for himself, too. Leadership wasn't just about managing operations. It was about upholding the values that made his cafe a place worth visiting. As the evening wound down, the elderly woman prepared to leave, her calm demeanor unchanged. David walked her to the door, holding it open as she stepped out into the crisp evening air. For a moment, they stood there together, the glow from the cafe's windows illuminating their faces. You did good, son, she said, her voice carrying a warmth that softened the day's tension. David smiled faintly. I still wish it hadn't happened at all. She placed a hand on his arm. What matters is how you responded. You gave everyone in there something to think about, something they'll carry with them. That's the real change." He nodded, watching as she made her way to the car waiting by the curb. Before getting in, she turned back and offered him one last smile. Inside the cafe, the staff worked quietly to close up, the earlier incident still fresh in their minds. Sarah gathered the team for a brief meeting, her tone serious yet constructive. "What happened tonight is a wake-up call," she began, "not just about how we treat our guests, but about the culture we're creating here. Every person who walks through those doors deserves respect, no exceptions." The staff nodded, their expressions solemn. Alex's absence was palpable, a reminder of what happens when prejudice replaces professionalism. As David returned inside, he glanced around the emptying dining room. The events of the evening weighed on him, but they also reaffirmed his commitment to making the daily grind more than just a cafe. It had to be a place where dignity and kindness were served alongside the finest coffee. For the guests who had witnessed it all, the night would linger in their minds. They had come for a coffee break, but left with a story that reminded them of the power of respect, the importance of standing up, and the quiet strength of those who refuse to let injustice define them. And to you watching, ask yourself, what would you have done in that moment? Would you have spoken up? Would you have stood by and let it happen? These moments aren't always obvious, but they're everywhere. Let tonight's story be a reminder to choose dignity and empathy every time. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe and share. It's through these conversations that we grow together.